Hello, how would you like your team to be more productive in and getting the right things done in the right way, at the right time in the right way? Hello, my name is Tim Mcdearman. I'm a senior IT project manager living in the beautiful city of Tampa Bay. And in Tampa, there are lots of beautiful locations. Today, I'm out in the park on Eagle Lake and I'm up on the observation deck. Beautiful scenery back there. Beautiful. I'm all wet today because it was raining. But being an agile project manager, we go on no matter what. We adapt. We inspect. We adapt, and we change, and we make it happen. So we're making this video happen, even though I am drenched from rain. Now, what I'm really talking about here is the product backlog in Agile. The backlog. That's the list of the work, the pieces of scope. Different pieces of scope go together to form the product backlog. User stories is one example, but different user stories prioritized. So what makes for a good backlog is one that is organized. And how do we want to organize it? So think of the word deep. D-E-E-P, deep. Stands for detailed and emergent and estimated and prioritized. So a good product backlog is that. Detailed meaning when we pick an item off of this backlog that has enough details in it for people to go to work and get that done, that piece of the work done. So that's detailed. Then emergent is that this backlog is in constant change. It's constantly emerging. You're constantly adding things to it, changing stories, removing stories, reprioritizing, moving things up and down the backlog. That's the emergent piece of it. You have to be constantly working on it. It's never finished. It's never done. It's always a work in progress, okay? The other E is estimated. You don't start work on something until you at least have an estimate of how long it's going to take you. That's crazy to start without that. So you don't know up front when you add something in to the product backlog how long it's going to take. But as you're constantly grooming and grooming and grooming, then you're starting to estimate the higher prioritized tickets, get estimates on them so you can start work on them. And then the P in deep is for prioritized. The highest priority items need to be at the top, the very top of the list, because that's where the users, the development teams, the people working on these issues, they're going to start looking there first to get the highest priority ones done first. So when you think of a product backlog, think of deep. Now, kind of one of the things that you have to understand when you're working with the product backlog is you have to understand what is this team's definition of ready. The team that's doing the work has to define the criteria that the story has to meet before they will accept it into a sprint and start working on it. That's what that criteria is about. So, and we just talked about estimating. So for a story to be picked, it really needs to be estimated. That's one of the things usually you find in a definition of done for a story, is estimated. Another thing is to have the acceptance tests cases defined on the story. Those are things that really define what the story is about for the developer. So those things need to be there, etc. So there's a couple of items. There's more things that you could find your definition done, but why that's important when dealing with grooming is that's the objective, is you're trying to go through those stories and get them to the point where they can be worked on, and that point is when they meet the definition of ready. So you're looking through those tickets, those stories, trying to bring them up to the quality level where they meet the definition of ready. Now, these grooming sessions, you have backlog grooming sessions. When do you have them? They're had as needed. as much as needed, but you would at least do them, I would think, once a week would be a good time frame for them. And it's good to do before you're planning the sprint. You need to have a good product backlog, a groomed product backlog with stories in it that meet the definition of ready before you can plan your sprint, because you need those stories prioritized and up at the top and meeting the definition of ready before they can go into a sprint. So that's one good time to have them, is before then. Another good time is when you're having your workshops, story writing workshops. At that time you're adding stories into the product backlog, so that's a good grooming time. Another good grooming time is at the end of the sprint, because the things that you learned during the sprint are going to contribute new items that need to go into the backlog, items that need to be changed, things you learned going through the sprint cause the sprint to the product backlog to need to be updated, etc. So those are some good times, but at least once a week would be good. And you could just have a scheduled meeting every week. I do mine on Wednesdays to go gather the team together and go through the grooming process. Who is on the team? The main leader of this grooming session, and the most important person, is the owner. The owner, the product owner needs to be there. He owns the product, so he needs to be there to make sure the changes going into the sprint are actually changes that are needed, etc. So he needs to prioritize. He owns the car. The developers are just the mechanics. He owns the car. So he gets to say what gets done to his car. So he needs to be there. The developers need to be there. They need to have a say-so, and they need to contribute work estimates to the user story, so they need to be there during the grooming sessions. And a carefully selected list of stakeholders. The list of stakeholders are people who have stories in the product backlog. Business people have stories in the backlog, have an interest in those grooming sessions as well. They need to be there to advise and answer questions, etc. So that's who needs to be there, and that's when we need to have them. Now, so that's enough. That's a good, gives you a good background of how to maintain your product backlog in a high quality state. Thank you all very much. Now I'm going to go explore the rest of the park. Look at this beautiful scenery around me. I don't know if you can. I'm turning. Absolutely gorgeous out here. So this is Eagle Lake Park. If you ever have the opportunity to go visit Tampa, go see this park. Thank you.